Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
A 42-year-old man put on some goalie equipment for the Carolina Hurricanes and defeated the Maple Leafs in a National Hockey League game. I find this quite funny, actually.
It's the e-bug. The acronym e-bug, which I had never heard of before. All of a sudden this week, it was all over the place.
You know, it's funny. I heard Brian Burke say e-bug, and I'm like, what is an e-bug? And that was the first time I ever heard it also.
I'm not even going to tell people the definition. If you don't know what it is, you got to look it up.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, Tony Romo,
Spike Lee,
and Henri Richard.
But first, what's bugging Josh?
Okay, Skip, first I want to wish a happy International Women's Day to all the women that are listening to our show. And you're probably aware that International Women's Day falls on March 8th every year. It's not like one of those things where it's like the third Monday in October or whatever. It's always on March 8th, regardless of what day of the week that is. But my first question for you is, did you know that there's an International Men's Day?
Oh, no, when is that?
Okay, well, I didn't think you knew, and I didn't know until about an hour ago. International Men's Day is every year on November 19th.
Okay, we'll celebrate it then.
We will, if we remember.
Okay, yeah.
Because they don't make a big deal out of it. But
no.
Let's get on with the show. Now, today's show might be a little bit different because I actually don't have a lot of sports to talk about, but there are many, many, many things that are bothering me. So I need to get a few things off my chest.
Is this going to be one of those, like, giant What Bugs Me episodes?
It might.
We haven't done one of those in a while.
It might end up being that way.
You're kidding me? Boy, are you bugging me, man. I'm gonna nail. Ooh, God. I'm getting bugged now. Whoa, man.
Okay, let's start. What's the first thing then?
So the first thing that's bugging me, and actually you mentioned it when we were off air, it's daylight savings time. And so let me explain, because this thing has been bothering me since I was born, or since I knew about clocks. Yeah. The whole idea that we switch the clocks 1 hour ahead in March and then 1 hour back in whatever it is, November, I don't even know. To me, it's so backwards. Just leave the clocks as they are and don't ever change them. And if you think that that's a crazy idea, let me just say this. There are many places all over the world, and even some provinces in Canada, that do not switch their clocks ever. So me saying this is not such a crazy idea. It would solve people many problems. It would save us a lot of time having to fix all our clocks every year, twice a year. And
well, no one has to fix them anymore, right? Don't they all change sort of automatically now?
Well, the new ones change automatically, yes. But there are some that, if you have an old clock, then it doesn't change automatically. Yeah. But so daylight savings time is the first thing that's bugging me today.
I believe the province of Saskatchewan doesn't change their clocks, or is it part of Saskatchewan?
I think it's the entire province, in fact.
And also, so that's where I'm getting confused. And also Arizona in the United States, although I don't think it's the entire state of Arizona, which makes things very confusing. Mm-hmm. So I know they don't change. So like those places are sort of like my hero, right? Like those people have stood up. The people in those states that legislated those laws, they're like standing up for all that's right in the world, and all that, like when they're making laws, we're like, no, we're not going to do this. This doesn't make sense. Let's just leave well enough alone and leave it as it is. You're absolutely right. It's infuriating. I don't understand. And people will say, oh, it's because you're going to have hours of darkness early in the morning or at night. I'm like, who cares? Let's live by this. Let's just go with what the sun gives us. Right. I mean,
right. So thank you for mentioning that, because you're still going to have the same amount of daylight in a day. It's the only difference is, will you have it at 7 a.m. or will you have it at 5 p.m. or whatever? And who is to say that it's more important to have it at 7 a.m. than it is to have it at 5 p.m.? In fact, I'd rather have it in the afternoon or in the evening than in the morning. I would rather.
Right. All right, next thing.
By the way,
there are just so you know, I agree.
There are a lot of places in Europe that don't change their clocks, and also there are some provinces in Canada that currently do change their clocks, but are seriously considering not doing it after today. So let's hope that the whole country gets on board and doesn't do it anymore. The other thing that is bothering me is somewhat related to this, but not exactly. As you know that we had February 29th this year. It's a leap year. And this whole thing bothers me as well because it's been very hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that every 4 years we have an extra day. It doesn't really make any sense to me. And I have a theory, not necessarily a conspiracy theory, but I have a theory. You know how I've been saying to you that you notice how nowadays, the last 5 or 10 years, April and May, they're not nice months anymore. They're not warm anymore. They're cold. And by the same token, you know, October and November that used to be cold are now actually somewhat warm. And so my theory is that because we've added this extra day to the calendar every 4 years for the last, I don't know, 100 years, maybe more, maybe 1,000 years, this is why April and May are no longer warm and October and November are no longer cold. I mean, it's taken a long time for this whole cycle to happen, but that's my conspiracy theory.
Okay, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a ridiculous theory, and it's completely way off. And you're ignoring science. You're just going by sort of like looking out your window and saying this is what it is. So, if we did not have February 29th, right?
Yeah.
If we did not have February 29th, after 100 years of not having February 29th, so let's assume that we've been doing it for 100 years, right?
Probably longer.
The calendar right now would be off by 24 days.
But would it, though?
So if you like to have spring in March and April, and you like to have summer in June and July, and you like to have winter in November and December, January, you need to have February 29th.
Except, but
otherwise,
then explain to me,
the days are just going to move around.
Explain to me why April and May are now cold, whereas 20 years ago when we were kids, April and May were nice weather months.
I cannot explain it. I'm not a scientist, but it has nothing to do with adding February 29th.
Well, maybe it does. Because you were just saying if we didn't do it, then summer wouldn't be when summer is and winter wouldn't be when winter is. But maybe if we didn't do it, everything would just be fine. Similar to
things would balance
similar
themselves
to
out.
similar to changing the clocks. Like if we didn't change the clocks, everything would just be fine.
Can't believe we're talking about this. Okay, but since this is a sports related show and you did talk about February 29th, I'm going to segue.
Okay.
The most famous person who had a birthday on February 29th in my life is just passed away this week.
This is true.
That's Henry Richard.
Yes.
Henry Richard, Hall of Famer for the Montreal Canadiens. So it was a sad day here, and it was all over the news, and as it should be. And it's just, you know, it's sad to see the legends pass, but there was a lot of great stories that I heard on the radio and on social media, and a lot of great stories, and I'm just going to share one with you. So as you know, Henry Richard he's the most famous player for one specific reason. Well, one, he's the brother of Maurice Richard, the Rocket, but also he has 11 Stanley Cup rings, which is the most Stanley Cups of any player. So this is one thing that I heard on the radio this week. So although he did win the Stanley Cup 11 times, he actually only had 10 Stanley Cup rings, actual rings that he could wear on his fingers. And he said because on the first Stanley Cup that he won, they did not give a ring. They gave the players a turkey.
Who wants a turkey?
I don't know, but that's the story that was told on the radio this week.
All right.
Anyways, condolences to the Richard family and, you know, all the Montreal Canadiens family as well, you know.
Agreed. And since you started talking about hockey,
the National Hockey League.
Here's another thing that bugs me. You know, when a great player like, let's say, Guy Lafleur, he left the Montreal Canadiens, and then, of course, at a certain point, he came back to play in Montreal as a member of the visiting team. And that was a pretty big deal.
Correct.
Similarly, when Wayne Gretzky left the Edmonton Oilers, he eventually came back to play a game in Edmonton as a member of the visiting team. And that, of course, was a huge deal. But nowadays, it seems that any single player that leaves his team for whatever reason, when he comes back to play his first game as a visiting member as a visiting team member in his old city, they do these video tributes for them, even though the player is not really like an amazing player, and he may not have even spent that much time in that city. And the most...
Which player are you thinking of?
Well, this week, for example, the most recent example, Jean-Gabriel Pajot, who's a nice player. He played for Ottawa, I think, for parts of 4 seasons or something like that. And now he's on the New York Islanders.
Right.
And the Islanders were playing in Ottawa this week. And so they did this video tribute for Jean-Gabriel Pajot in Ottawa, which was, it's a nice video tribute. But you have to give me a break here. He is not Wayne Gretzky. He is not Guy Lafleur. And it is not a big deal. And I don't think a video tribute is necessary. And now they do these video tributes for every single player. It's like, it's not even a big deal anymore. They do them for all of these players. I can't give you, another example, because I guess there hasn't been one this season, and maybe there wasn't. I'm just forgetting. But like,
I think you mentioned this once before, actually.
I may have.
About someone that got, yeah.
I may have.
I mean, look, what happened this week with Pajot, that just reeks of the Ottawa Senators. That's a Senators move.
Well, in fact, thank you.
The Senators...
You just reminded me, because if you recall late last season after the trade deadline, when the Senators traded, it seemed like every player on their roster. And I don't know if it was Matt Duchene or some other guy that they traded came back to play.
Yeah. They gave him a tribute. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave him a tribute. I mean, give me a break. The guy was on your team for 15 minutes.
Senators are such a... Here's the thing. So, like, they're a Canadian team, and all the other Canadian teams, well, a lot of them have a lot bigger history. Obviously, Montreal and Toronto have a history that goes back hundreds of years, right? And then if you look at some of the other teams, Calgary and Edmonton, they've had Stanley Cup wins, right? And they at least have like a 30, 40-year history, right? Where they can draw on and great players and everything. And then even Vancouver, they're on the edge, but they do go back, quite many years. Ottawa is so desperately trying to be relevant, right? They're so desperately trying to like give themselves this legacy that they don't have, right? Like, so they try so hard that it's so misguided. Like, they should just let things be. Nothing wrong. If they want to recognize Pajot on the scoreboard, put up a little thank you for your years, but like a whole video montage and everything, like as if he's some kind of Hall of Famer, that's a little bit.
Well, I'm sure you recall, and you might have even been at this game, PK Subban's first game back in Montreal. Now, PK Subban, obviously a very polarizing figure in Montreal, and his years in Montreal were good years in Montreal. But I'm going to say, he didn't play that many years in Montreal, number one. Number two, he never won a Stanley Cup. So, like, I don't know if he deserved a video tribute. I honestly don't know if he did.
I guess that's the way of the NHL in 2020, right? Teams are trying to give themselves some kind of, I don't know. Anyways, what's next?
Well, it's along the same lines. It has to do with hockey, and it has to do with ceremonies. So I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah.
But now, anytime a team retires a jersey number, and this is not just Canadian teams, but anytime a team retires a player's jersey number, they have this huge, like, hour-long ceremony prior to the game. In fact, they start the ceremony an hour before puck drop because they know it's going to take so long. Okay, so first of all, I don't think that the ceremony needs to be a full hour. That's one thing. The other thing that bugs me about it is these things are now televised. It's like if you look at your guide, you'll have the hockey game that starts at 7:00, and then before the hockey game, it'll say like Roberto Luongo jersey retirement, and it's an hour-long thing on your television guide.
Right.
And I mean, like, really? We're going to spend an hour like listening to this stuff? And there are some players that have had great careers that deserve, their moment in the sun or whatever you want to call it. But like the Sedins, they had one like a few weeks ago in Vancouver, and now yesterday Roberto Luongo in Florida. I mean, it's just, I've had enough of it. I don't care. I don't want to see it. I like you had a great.
You don't have to watch it.
No, I don't have to watch it. But I mean, the fact that they spend that much time, and in fact, yesterday's jersey retirement, was supposed to finish at like 7:00, and then the game was supposed to start at 7. But the game actually didn't start till 7:30 yesterday. I don't know if you knew that even.
Right.
So I don't know if that's because the ceremony went longer than it was supposed to, or who knows what happened. But
because the Saturday games are not supposed to start. They're supposed to start at 7.
correct, or whatever, 7:05 or 7:10, but not 7:30.
So speaking of jersey retirements,
Yeah.
it's incredible that you like sort of had this telepathy.
Mm.
I got a text this week from friend of the show Mark in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and he sent me, here's a quiz question and don't look it up. So I'm going to do the same thing to you right now because he put me on the spot. What sports team in all 4 major sports has retired the most jersey numbers?
I'm going to say Montreal.
Do you know
I'm
the
going to
answer?
say Montreal Canadiens.
That's what I said too. It's not the correct answer.
Okay.
I don't know the number, but the correct answer is the Boston Celtics.
The Boston Celtics.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah. And just interesting. Wanted to see if you would get that.
Okay. I didn't know that. Now I do have a couple more, or maybe one more hockey note.
Sure.
The Canadians came out and made this announcement this week that Claude Julien is going to be back as head coach next year. So
Yeah.
never mind that I'm disappointed that he's going to be back. My question is, why do you even have to make that announcement? Like, usually teams that aren't making a change don't make an announcement. So here, they're not making a change. What is there to announce?
Well, I mean, there's a long history of general managers and owners coming out and saying, giving the vote of confidence to a coach, right? This is not a new thing. Usually it follows by that coach getting fired shortly after. But in this case, that's not going to happen because he's not going to get fired this season.
Well, no, not this season. Definitely not. It's too late.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to get fired in the offseason. Now that he's come out and said he's my coach next year, he's going to be. Anyways, I don't know why why the GM felt that he had to come out and say that, and it sort of speaks to like the strangeness of the organization under Bergevin. Like he feels that has to justify himself, or he doesn't have to justify himself. I don't know. There's no direction to anything, including there's no direction on the ice, on the product, like in terms of where the organization's going. But there's also no direction in terms of like what the GM says and doesn't say, because he has these random press conferences where he talks about moves and he addresses the media. Like it's really like haphazard. Everything just seems completely random and very like reactionary instead of, I guess he felt like he probably read an article in one newspaper saying that Julien should be fired, or he saw it on Twitter and he felt like he had to come out and say, no, he's my coach, you know? So I wish he would get fired personally. I think Julien's the biggest problem. That
same day, I read this, I don't know what website it was. I was reading it. They also mentioned that Carey Price and Shea Weber will also be back next season. And this one's even more of a head scratcher because
no one's questioning that at all.
Well, I mean, first of all, of course they're going to be back because the trade deadline has passed, so you can't trade them.
Right.
Number one, number two, you can't trade them because their contracts are so big and no team is going to want it or want them. So I don't know why they had to announce that either, but just a few things that were very confusing to me this week.
I mean, I guess they could be traded in the offseason around the draft, but like you said, Price it's impossible to trade him because first of all, he has no movement. Second of all, his contract is huge. Weber probably could get moved. I think teams might find him attractive, and his contract, we're at the point where his contract is getting to the end. So it's not as prohibitive as it might seem, but I don't know. You're right. There's no reason to make that announcement.
By the way, you said 2 reasons why you can't trade Price. You forgot the third reason, which is he's not even that good anymore. And if you were going to have your highest paid player on the team be your goalie, that's fine if you want to do that. But then that player needs to be your best player. And he is not the best goalie in the NHL. I don't even know if he's a top 10 goalie in the NHL anymore, to be honest.
He still has the reputation. If you look at strictly by the numbers, you're 100% right. And I agree with you. But, there was a poll that came out. They do that NHL PA players poll. Mm-hmm. And it's like, just came out like this month. And it was like, if you had to pick one goalie to play one game, the 7th game or whatever, and Price was the answer. That the majority of NHL players picked Carey Price as the goalie they would want to have in nets for a game 7. So he still has a reputation among players and most likely among coaches and GMs as this great goalie. So I think, contract aside, I think teams would want him. You know?
But you just said it. It's reputation. And a lot of that is based on maybe his first 5 years in the league. But now, if you look at his last 5 years in the league,
I agree with you.
He's been, a bit above average.
Yeah, I agree. He's been hot and cold because when you look at his numbers this year, they're actually not that bad. He has a decent save percentage, considering he's on such a lousy team. If you see, like, he's faced the most number of shots, I think, in the league or close to it, right? So when you look at that, you're like, okay, but I mean, the problem is when you see him, at times he's been brutal. Like, he started off the season, he couldn't stop anything. And then he got super hot, where he went like 4 to 6 weeks at one point right after January where he was like on fire. But goalie's numbers is very, very difficult to separate like a goalie's numbers from the team's performance. A great team, a good goalie on a great team is going to have great numbers, and a good goalie on a lousy team is going to have lousy numbers, regardless. The same goalie, you put him, you change teams, like that affects your stats, anyways.
Well,
Carey Price, we could do like 75 minutes on Carey Price.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with hockey.
Okay. Did you see that they didn't change the e-bug rule?
I saw that. Yes. They had this whole long meeting and they didn't
met,
change anything.
they had a big meeting. They decided, well, sanity prevailed, right? Like they just decided, no, there's nothing wrong with this, which is what we said last week.
Well, no, you said there's nothing wrong with it. I think they should have changed it.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's like something that when you consider all the other problems in the NHL, especially in terms that no one understands what goalie interference is anymore. No one understands how the replay works. The officiating is all over the place. Like, when you see that, like, the e-bug is the least of their problems if they want to look at rule changes,
That's fine. They don't want to change it. They don't have to change it. It's up to them. But then when you have a Toronto person playing against Toronto, if the player or the person happens to give up 8 goals and Toronto wins the game, then nobody better scream that was, done intentionally to give Toronto 2 points.
But I don't think anybody did scream that.
Well, they were when he gave up the first 2 goals on his first 2 shots.
Well, only fans, Josh. Only fans.
I don't know if it was only
fans. And you know how fans are, right? Fans are going to blame anything and everything as soon as their team loses. I don't think you heard anybody in the Leafs organization would ever say that, so...
No one in the Leafs organization, but did you see the look on Rod Brendamore's face when they had to use this goalie?
Well, I mean, the look on his face is I don't think he thought like we don't know what's in Rod Brendamore's mind, but I don't think he ever thought like, oh man, they're out to get me because the Leafs are giving us this guy. I mean, basically like he got screwed because both his goalies got hurt, Yeah. All right, what else you got?
Football.
I want to talk about football for a second. We did talk about the XFL, but there's 2 important things that I forgot to mention last week that I like about the XFL.
More XFL.
Sorry?
More XFL.
Well, I mean, it's really like they're doing some smart things.
Yeah, but the problem is they won't be around long enough for it to make it.
Well, then other leagues could take a page from their book. In fact,
yeah.
In fact, the first thing I'm going to mention is that the play clock is only 20 seconds in the XFL, which is, I think, half what it is in the NFL, which is great.
Yeah.
And I think the CFL does the same thing. I think the CFL, it's also only 20 seconds. So that's one other thing that I really like about the XFL, because there's nothing more frustrating when you're watching an NFL game and they intentionally let the play clock go down to 1 second before snapping the ball.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I wish. I don't know about change. You're absolutely right. It's much too easy to run out the clock in the NFL because the play clock is so long, right?
Yeah.
So when you're the lead and you're under 5 minutes and you have the ball, you can really take down that clock big time. And I don't know about cutting it in half in the NFL, but I would love to see them take 10 seconds off it.
At least.
Yeah.
I mean, you're seeing like in the NBA and NCAA basketball, they've reduced the play clock in the last few years.
Yeah.
So every league is doing it except the NFL. So anyway, the other thing I really like about the XFL is I actually have watched some of their games. Like, I don't watch a full game, but if you ever watch the games, on the screen there, you know, where it's got on the score bug at the bottom, it tells you the score of the game, how much time is left, how many timeouts left. Yeah. It also says right there, it tells you what the spread is for the game and what the over-under is for the game right on the screen. Like, they're not even hiding the fact that people can gamble. Like, they want you to bet on these games. And I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great. I don't know why the NFL doesn't do it.
But is it the NFL deciding, or is this the network? I mean, it's ESPN, right?
Well, the games are on ESPN and Fox.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So
interesting.
Oh no, I'm sure
the NFL's always had.
I'm sure it's a joint decision by the league and the network to put it there. 100%.
100%. And the NFL's always had this kind of precarious relationship with gambling, right? In that it's like the league is like always frowned upon gambling, but at the same time they also know that everybody's gambling on it. Right? I mean, come on. It's like it is really, really strange. Like, the NFL's relationship with gambling never ever made sense. And now we're in the age of fantasy football, and we're in the era of 2 or 3 seasons in now of daily fantasy football, where that is real gambling, really much more than just the average fantasy football league where people do it for fun. You know, look, I'm in a fantasy football league. I've been in fantasy football leagues for years. The last 10, 20 that I did, there was no money changing hands. We just do it for fun and for pride and to say you're the winner, you know? But the daily fantasy it's all about money. You know, it's all about trying to win. So it is definitely strange.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Like you said, the NFL never talks about it, but let me tell you, if not half the people that are watching, maybe 90% of the people that are watching because they have some sort of vested interest either in a specific player or a specific team. Like, if you're a person that lives in, I don't know, California, and there's a game between New England and New York, you're watching that game. You might not be a fan of either team, but why are you watching the game? Right. Either you've bet on the game or you've got some fantasy players in that game. So,
absolutely.
So I mean, like, so they've never admitted, the NFL has never admitted that, you know, gambling is a huge part of the sport. Here, the XFL is fully being like completely transparent, and that's what I love about it.
Also, the networks, right? Like, you're old enough, and we're going to really date ourselves here. You're old enough to remember Jimmy the Greek. You remember this guy? Okay, so he was on the NFL Today. I believe it was on CBS, or maybe it was NBC. I don't remember. So, like, that's like in the 70s. Maybe the early 80s. I'd have to look up when Jimmy the Greek like got fired and let go. But like, that's the last time a network like NFL show had a guy on specifically to talk about the gambling angle, right? Like, that's what he was. This guy was a professional gambler. They put him on TV to talk about the games. He didn't have any knowledge of sports. He's not an ex-athlete. He was talking strictly like, this team should win because Vegas, the line is good. Like, he came at it from a strictly gambling angle. And Bill Simmons, well, you know, I'm a fan, but like, they have a podcast that's directly called Against All Odds with his buddy cousin Sal. That's strictly about gambling on sports. He's going to tell you who they think you should bet on. And I applaud them for that because they're not shying away from it. But you can see like CBS, NBC, Fox, ESPN, they don't have a guy like Jimmy the Greek that's telling you should take Cleveland today because they're -6. You know, that doesn't exist, you know?
And by the way, the NFL should embrace this whole gambling thing, because if you're watching a game and, you know, there's like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter and San Francisco is blowing out Tampa Bay and the outcome of the game is not in doubt, well, the outcome might not be in doubt. The winning team might not be in doubt, but the spread might still be in doubt. And so that is the reason that people actually stay tuned to watch the end of the game, because they want to know, are they going to cover the spread or not? And so...
Isn't there some leagues... Go ahead. Isn't there some leagues like I thought like the NHL that kind of embraced a little bit of gambling, and they said they were going to be able to gamble on sports during games?
Yeah, I think it's the NHL and the NBA, where in some arenas you can actually bet on the game while you're sitting in your seat. Yeah. Like from your phone.
I listened to a whole podcast about the dangers of that and how come sports didn't like it. That's a whole topic for a whole other day. What else you got?
Speaking of gambling and football, I don't know if you remember, this is a few months ago now, when I went and played Pro Line that one day where this was either wild card weekend or the weekend after, where there were 4 games. And so
they wouldn't let you bet because too many people bet the same permutations as you
correct.
Yeah.
So I ended up betting and I picked 4 games. So I never told you this. So I didn't win. I told you that I didn't win. But the interesting thing is that I got all 4 games wrong, which, by the way, is not easy to do.
It's like shorting the stock market.
I mean, think about it.
Not...
Like, getting all 4 games wrong is almost as difficult as getting all 4 games right.
It's actually probably more difficult.
You know, like seriously, like that's how bad it was.
Oh my God, that's super funny.
Anyway.
Can I have another NFL note? I wanted to get your reaction.
Sure.
Tony Romo.
$17 million?
If you don't write checks, how do you pay these guys?
Straight cash, homie.
I read that it's actually more than that. That they think it's a slightly more than 17. Like the actual contract details are not released, but it's at least 17 million a season. It's obscene, no?
Well, that explains why he retired so early, because really, I think he could have still played at the time.
Yeah.
Like there are
he could have played 1 or 2 more years for sure.
There are quarterbacks in the NFL now that are not as good as Tony Romo would be if he played today. So
I agree.
So
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know about today, but like the last couple of years for sure. Yeah.
But I mean, if someone's going to pay you $17 million to sit in a booth and talk about a game, and then you don't have to get hit by these huge linebackers, that explains why he retired. And if someone wanted to give me $17 million to talk about sports, then I would take it also.
Yeah. And it was like a preemptive contract, right? Supposedly, like, they signed him because they thought ESPN was going to steal him. And I was like, look, I like Tony Romo. I like him in the booth. I think he's fun to listen to. But I'm not going to watch a game. Like, I've got 2 games on at the same time, right? Like, I've got a game on CBS and I've got a game on ESPN. I am not going to say, ooh, I got to watch that game on CBS because Tony Romo's in the booth. That's not the deciding factor of what I'm tuning into. You tune into because you want to watch a specific team, or you want to watch a specific player, or you want to watch a specific matchup. But like, it's nothing to do with who is in the booth. Nothing.
Agreed. 100%.
So the fact that they're paying him so much money, I feel it's like they're almost, it's, I don't know. It's really, really weird. It's just weird. And like, I know that Monday Night Football took a lot of heat this year. This was the worst broadcasting team of Monday Night Football in the history of our lives. Booger McFarland was a hot mess. This guy made mistakes, and like, he would talk about wrong stuff, and like, it was a disaster. But like, I don't think it affected the ratings. If anything, it actually helps because people want to watch to see this clown. You know, like, it just boggles my mind that they could give Tony Romo that much money. It's just like, it's weird.
Yeah, well, television networks, they have all this crazy money for some reason, you know, like just the amount of money they pay to have the rights to show the games, you know, 17 million is just like a drop in the bucket for them, right? So
yeah, I know, but think about all the profit they could make if they would just sign someone to pay him $1 million a year. A guy from you know, like, there's tons of broadcasters.
They could have get you for $1 million.
I don't think I could broadcast. I don't think I could. I couldn't, but like. But anyways, yeah, it is a bit bizarre. But do you hear the other, like, these rumors about Romo that, like, because he's making so much money that CBS is going to want to use him to broadcast golf also?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, Jim Nantz does more than one sport, so...
Well, like, all the highest paid guys in all the networks do more than one sport, right? Like Al Michaels and Joe Buck and... I can't remember all the names. But,
Jim
like,
Nantz.
there's guys that do... Yeah, Jim Nantz, what's his name? Gus Johnson, you know, like, there's guys that do like all the sports, right?
Yeah.
But Tony Romo's just working for 16 weeks or maybe 17. We'll see. But
actually, it's 17, maybe 18.
Right. But I mean, he's only working during the NFL season.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of the year, like right now in March, this guy's relaxing at home, cashing his checks.
I know, wearing his Skechers, and he's wearing his comfortable shoes, and he's relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah, good thing he has those Skechers, right?
Yeah.
Do you have more stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could talk about basketball if you want.
The National Basketball Association.
I wanted to know, I have nothing to talk about games in basketball. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't care. I didn't watch any games this week of NBA.
Neither did I.
I mean, I follow I watch it loosely. I see the highlights. Zion Williamson is really like a beast, honestly. Like, he's proving to everybody that he's the next star in the league for sure. But like the big news this week in the NBA, and I don't know how closely you followed it, but I read every article I could and I watched every TV show that I could, was Spike Lee versus the Knicks. Like, you know about this whole thing?
I did hear all about it. I thought it was great.
This is like high drama. This is unbelievable stuff, like. So just to like set the scene, apparently Spike Lee's been going into the employee entrance of Madison Square Garden for like almost 30 years, 28 years. And at the last game that he went to, he went in the entrance and he went upstairs, and then as soon as he got out of the elevator, they told him, no, you have to leave and you're not allowed to use this entrance anymore, and you have to use the VIP entrance. And Spike Lee was not happy. Basically, like, started a war with James Dolan, saying that they're after me. And then he has all these conspiracy theories that Dolan tried to set him up after by sort of getting a picture of them shaking hands to say that it's all good when it wasn't all good. And it's pretty indicative of how things are going with the Knicks, to tell you the truth.
Yes. However, if there is a VIP entrance for people, famous people like Spike Lee, then that's the entrance that he should be using. I get it. I mean, I think he thinks he's special, and, he sits right next to the bench or whatever he does. And I don't think it's unrealistic for the Knicks to request that he doesn't use the employee entrance, because he's not an employee.
I know, but then why not request that at the beginning of the season when they give him his season ticket?
Right, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it in the middle of the year.
Give him a phone call. I mean, the guy's been a season ticket holder for 28 years. Give him a phone call and say, "Hi, Mr. Lee. We'd really like you to use the other entrance. This is the reason." Like, just be transparent about it. So the other thing about Spike Lee is that someone calculated approximately how much money he spent on his courtside seats over the last 28 years. Apparently it's $10 million.
Well, those seats are expensive.
God, what is wrong with our planet, Josh? It's unbelievable.
Those seats are expensive. So,
Yeah. He's gotta be seen and talk to the players and be sitting there right on the courtside, right?
So since you mentioned basketball, I'm wondering, ever since the NFL season ended, there's now there's an NBA basketball game of the week on ABC on Saturday night, and then there's another one on ABC on Sunday afternoon, and it's usually like high profile teams. Like today, I think it's LA versus LA. Do you ever watch those games on Saturday nights?
I have not this year. Really, not this year. As we did speak off air, like I usually am busy on Saturday nights doing, other stuff. But I've watched the Sunday afternoon games several times since they put it on. But in years past, I have watched that Saturday night game because they've had some very interesting matchups. Like they usually really, really try to get like some really good matchups. Not so much yesterday.
Yesterday was really bad, actually.
Yesterday is just the NBA was a victim of their scheduling in advance, right? Because it was the Sixers and the Warriors, and so the Warriors are terrible, although Curry's back, and the Sixers are not good and completely injured with all their stars not playing, so that was no good. Right. But so who's playing today? The Lakers and the Clippers?
Yeah. And by the way, last night, actually, the Warriors actually beat the Sixers. That's how bad the Sixers are.
Yeah, Sixers are not good at all. Clippers and the Lakers, so that's pretty interesting.
Well, that's a huge game.
I believe huge game. Well, I mean, the Clippers, when they've had to come up big, they played great. Like, did you see how they basically destroyed the Rockets this week and made James Harden look completely foolish? Like, Harden had like one of his worst games of the season this week. I feel like the Clippers are a little bit under the radar in that their record is good but not great. But like, come playoff time, I feel like if they're healthy, like, they can just say, okay, guys, no one's scoring against us now, and we're going to do whatever we want.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see a conference final, Clippers versus Lakers. I would like to see that.
Yeah, everybody wants to see that. That would be very good.
Yeah.
The Lakers are amazing, like, because their team sucks, but they have Anthony Davis when healthy, who's playing great, and they have LeBron, and I don't care what anybody says about LeBron, and I don't care what anybody. I know Giannis. Everybody says Giannis should be the MVP, but like LeBron James is the best player in the NBA. Like, you can't convince me otherwise. The guy is amazing. Like, he could do whatever he wants whenever he wants. And it would be fun to see him, making a long playoff run. The fact of the matter that, LeBron James is leading the league in assists.
I heard that. Yes. Yeah.
right? So like, just to tell you, like he came out this year and he said, okay, maybe I'm not as athletic as I was. Maybe my shooting is not as good as it used to be. Okay, I'll lead the league in assists this year. I'll just facilitate my team. And that's what he's doing. And they have the best record in the West. So,
by the way, it's a silent G. It's Giannis.
Giannis. It's funny because sometimes I say Giannis, sometimes I say Giannis. You know me with names and pronunciations. I'm not the best.
You're not good at all.
Definitely not my strength.
So one more basketball note. We're exactly 1 week away from Selection Sunday. So Duke played their final regular season game yesterday and they defeated UNC. It was interesting that the son of David Robinson, Justin Robinson, who's been on Duke for 4 years, but I think he's played 4 minutes in those 4 years.
No, not in the last few weeks though. Well, he's been playing this whole, like the last month, he's playing a lot.
Well, this is what I was going to say. For the last 3 games, Duke went on a little slide a couple of weeks ago, but then ever since Justin Robinson has been inserted into the lineup, he's played, 15 minutes or 20 minutes a game for the last 3 games. And yesterday he actually hit 4 3-pointers. And I think Duke has hit a total of 4 3-pointers in the last month, not including his yesterday. So maybe Duke has finally found someone who can actually hit a 3-pointer.
Maybe. Well, I mean, they hit 10 yesterday and he was 4 out of 6, which is pretty hot, So look, he's been around forever. He's been on the bench, it seems, forever. And like you said, his claim to fame is that he's David Robinson's kid. But I'm happy that he's playing. And actually, I'm happy that, like, I don't know what's going on with the roster and whatever. But, like, I feel like Coach K decided, hey, this guy's busting his butt in practice. This guy's like, let's just try to reward him. And then, like,
well, I mean, anyways, also
now he has.
Also, he's a senior, and last night was senior night, so he
was senior night.
So all the seniors always get to play, on senior night, obviously.
Yeah, but he's been playing minutes the last 5 games before that.
Right. Well, the last 3, right? I think.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's going to be an awesome tournament, Josh. I had in my notes to talk about the NCAA tournament. Maybe we'll talk about it next week because it'll be Selection Sunday. Before we sign off, remember, you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course, Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
So, do you have anything to leave the listeners with?
Yes, I do. And actually, funny enough, most of the show was not about sports, but this is actually about sports. About a month ago, a Canadian golfer by the name of Nick Taylor, he won the Pebble Beach tournament, which is a pretty big deal. It's not like one of the majors, but it's a pretty big golf tournament. So,
I used to play that course on Tiger Woods Golf on my old Windows 3 laptop desktop.
The fact that there is such a thing, anyway. So anyway, he won the tournament, and good for him. And it's rare that a Canadian wins a golf tournament because there's not that many Canadians that are on the tour to begin with. And on PTI on Mondays, they almost always talk about, in fact, they always talk about golf because there's usually a golf tournament on the weekend. So you would think that they would sort of celebrate this guy because he won an important tournament. And they did mention that he won, but they spent literally a few seconds on it. Most of the time, the only thing they talked about with regards to that tournament was how bad Phil Mickelson did, the fact that Larry Fitzgerald and Steve Young played in the tournament. And they hardly even mentioned Nick Taylor at all. Which is another thing, yet another thing that bugged me. But anyway, this whole episode was things that bugged me, so.
You're coming in hot today, Josh.
That's all I got.
So that's it. It's just that it bothered you that they didn't mention him. Well, we'll congratulate him. Congratulations to Nick Taylor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Officially, we're going to congratulate him.
Exactly.
I don't have anything much more to say other than, I kept watching Survivor this week, and I just, it's still good. And we mentioned last week that we are both watching the same show, Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. How did you like the last episode?
It was fine. I'll watch it tonight again. It's good that it's on Sunday nights because Sunday nights is usually, there's not much going on. So I might as well just watch it because it's on. But actually, I wanted to mention to you another show that we're both watching, Party of Five.
Yes. I was just about to ask you, how did you like the season?
Well, we're not. This Party of Five is not as good as the Party of Five from 20 years ago. That's.
I'm not so sure about that.
No, I like the old Party of Five much better. Much better.
I know you liked it better, but doesn't mean it's not as good.
I don't think this one's.
There's reasons why we liked the other one better, because we were 20 years old and we thought Nev Campbell was hot and we thought Jennifer Love Hewitt was hot. So that's why we watched the show.
Okay, but this one, I find that the dialogue in this one, because remember, the characters are supposed to be like 16 years old and 12 years old and whatever.
Yeah.
I find that the dialogue that they say is not a dialogue that a normal 16-year-old would say or a normal 12-year-old would say. I find it difficult to believe.
The oldest daughter, what is her name in the show?
I don't even remember her name.
Lucia.
Yeah.
She's first of all, she doesn't, the way she acts is not a 16-year-old girl. Like, it's not.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, she's like an adult.
Yeah.
And even Beto too, you know, so yeah. But I enjoyed the season. I thought it was good. I would watch season 2 if it came out.
Hold on, is the season
but
over?
I'm not sure there's gonna be. Yeah.
Was that the last episode of the season?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I thought it was going to be on it. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, okay.
That's why it was an hour and a half.
Well, that's the other thing.
So,
it was a 90-minute episode, but on the guide it only shows an hour, and so if you didn't record the show afterwards, then you missed the last half hour of the episode.
I know. I was lucky I watched it live, and I was like, oh, what's going on?
How did they make a mistake like that?
I don't know. It's not really them. It's the cable company.
Yes, exactly. It's the cable company.
Yeah. But they left it ambiguous. Like, the show could end and that could be it, but they give you a little bit of like, okay, it could continue. So I hope it continues. I would watch season 2.
I didn't know that was the last episode of the season. I had no idea. Okay.
All right, so I'll speak to you next time.
Yes. Whenever that is.